Welcome to the Language Project's training on methodology and lesson plans. As you're about to find out, the Language Project may be very different from many ways that you've learned language in the past. Let's take a look at how. At the Language Project, we see what we do as facilitating students on their linguistic journey. We do that by providing stimulating activities for them and many meaningful opportunities to interact with language and to use their bodies and their minds to demonstrate comprehension and to be able to produce Spanish. Our methodology is 100% comprehensible. That means students are going to understand everything that we say in Spanish. We're going to do that by using visuals, context clues, actions, facial expressions, anything we can do to help them understand what it is that we are saying. We are going to be a play-based methodology. Play is a child's primary form of learning. Therefore, we want to tap into that which already exists in every child, and that's a desire to acquire knowledge through play. And yes, we are going to be 100% Spanish, and we can do that by making sure that what we say is comprehensible. This methodology works because it is just like the way kids got their first language. Children first acquired their language by experience. They listened for nearly 2 years to everything that was being said around them. They were able to respond to that language before they were able to even speak it. Think, if you've been around a child that's acquiring language, you can speak to them and they can respond without saying a word. If I ask a young child, do you want to use the red cup or the blue cup today? They're going to point to the cup that they want because they understood the question, but they're not able to say, I would like to use the blue cup today, please. That's silly. We would never expect a child to do that. So pointing and using our bodies is going to be a very important way of acquiring Spanish as a second language as well. Children hear lots of repetition. They hear similar things being said every single day. It's time to get dressed. Put your pants on. Make sure the tag's in back. We need to develop multiple repetitions for our students as well. The research shows us that children and adults need meaningful repetitions of a language, 75 or more meaningful repetitions. So a big part of the way we facilitate that language journey is by creating meaningful repetitions for those children. We're going to do this in fun ways. We're going to have songs. We're going to have games. We're going to have activities, things that are not making the brain say, oh, I'm learning Spanish now, but things that make the brain say, oh, how do I do this now? We're not going to require our children to memorize charts or lists of words or conjugations because that's not what we do to our children. We don't ask our children to memorize conjugations. They learn to use vocabulary and structures by having multiple opportunities to hear the right way to use it and by having multiple opportunities to make mistakes and to finally get it right. How are we going to do this in our lessons? Every one of our lessons is designed for success. They are created as a series of short, engaging activities with an up-down energy cycle because we know that a series of short activities with differing energy levels helps children focus better. Adults even focus better in these ways. We're going to use sheltered vocabulary. We're not going to talk to these kids the way that we talk to our relatives or our friends. We're going to talk to them like they're children, like they're little children who are just acquiring the language. And we're going to give them lots and lots of opportunities to respond to Spanish and to produce it. Our lesson plans at the Language Project are written specifically for you as Language Project teachers. TLP teachers do not need to invent activities or write lesson plans. Every single thing that you are going to need, songs, games, activities, everything is going to be included in the lesson plans. And every part of the lesson plan is important. Every part is written with a specific purpose. It's important that no part be left out and that no part be added in. For teachers who have students for 30 minutes or less a week, we're going to teach you how to do that. There are 3 main parts to a language project lesson. We have our opening activities that help students trigger and transition from what they were doing previously into Spanish lesson mode. We have our core activities that build their language a little bit at a time. It's a series of small steps taken throughout their journey. And then finally, every single lesson, no matter how long or how short, is going to have a closing activity, because we don't want kids just rushing out of Spanish, going on to their next activity. We want to bring it to a solid close so that their minds know that they have an opportunity to stop and process what has been going on. The opening activities contain a greeting. We always want to greet our students, whether we're walking into their classroom or they're walking into ours. Looking into their eyes and greeting them is going to be an important part of our relationship development. We will start with a do now activity. This is something we do as soon as the kids arrive. For younger students, it's an opening song with actions. For older students, it's a quiet written activity. The purpose of a do now activity is to allow students to transition into Spanish language time. After that, we'll have a circle time. Our students don't physically sit in a circle. Circle time is a question and answer activity, and it is going to utilize the vocabulary from the previous lesson. So we have all of that language fired up in their brains, ready to go, so that we can add something new on top of it. After that, we're going to do a very physical activity. TPR, it stands for Total Physical Response. And what it does is it brings the vocabulary of the lesson and actions together. Every single vocabulary phrase or word is going to have an action associated with it. This is an action that teachers and students can use throughout each lesson to help trigger a memory of what that vocabulary, phrase, or word means. It also triggers a very different part of our brain than is typically associated with language. Our core activities, this is when we're introducing the new structures and the new vocabulary that we want to add on to the previous vocabulary and structures. We're always going to have a vocabulary introduction, which is a very low stakes, low stress activity that introduces new vocabulary or reviews old vocabulary. And then we're going to do something fun with that. We're going to play a game, or we're going to have a vocabulary enrichment where the students are thinking more about the activity than they are about the language, and the language just naturally comes along. These are our prize moments where students are thinking in the language, because they're not thinking about, oh, how do I say this? They're thinking, how do I do this activity? How do I win this game? Students remember songs long into their adulthood. It's the thing that stays with students the most. Perhaps it's thoroughly engaging both halves of the brain, but we have songs. Small children, they have opening and closing songs. They have core vocabulary songs. Older students have core vocabulary songs. On occasion, we have opening and closing songs. But this is what's going to stay with those students, even if they're middle school students who pretend like they don't like a song. If it's a song that's written at their level, using the vocabulary that they are acquiring, it's going to stay with them. We have stories and readings. Not only is this giving students an opportunity to just read, these stories and readings are giving students an opportunity to interact with language at a very high level. For our young children, the stories are repetitive. They are encouraged to participate in those stories, and by the time they're done with those stories, they can tell the stories themselves. Our older students, they begin with very small stories, not intimidating, just a few sentences. They do them with the teacher. They do the questions with the teacher. The teacher circles around the information, asking lots and lots of questions, and doesn't move on from one sentence to the next until the students know that information by heart. Activity books very often have written activities to do in them. Activity books are another way to develop language for our students. It's another way to increase repetitions. They're not just given to them and then they're expected to do them on their own. We do them together as a class. We use it as an opportunity to develop meaningful repetitions and to circle the vocabulary and the structures, as well as giving students great visualizations of how to write a response to written language. Our closing activities. I said this before, and I think it bears repeating, that no matter how long or short your class is, you're going to do closing activities. This may take you 1 to 5 minutes, depending upon what types of activities your group is finishing up with. But you're going to signal your students that it is the end of their last core activity. You say, el fin, or para, some sort of signal that allows students to know that we're stopping now. The students will receive a signal that it's time to clean up and put away their materials. As teachers, you're going to recognize the student behaviors that you want to see again. If your students were having a day where they were chatty and they were talking more maybe than they should have, you'll recognize some of the kids that were not talking as much. And you'll say, Marissa, you raised your hand. I knew that you were ready to respond. That way, students are being reinforced on what your expectations for them are. And then they will be dismissed in an orderly fashion. We don't say, okay, bye, and let them run to the door. No, we take them. If they are leaving your room, 1 row of desks at a time, we line them up as the final song is playing. If you're leaving them, maybe they're passing their books forward to you, and you address each row and say goodbye to them as you're leaving. We never want to return students to their teachers in a state where they're not prepared to learn their next lesson with them. Remember, no matter how long or short your class is, you're always going to have a beginning, you're always going to have a middle, and you're always going to have an end. You need to be prepared. First of all, you need to read through the lesson plan. The lesson plans are normally 8 to 10 pages in length. You need to review the digital lesson materials. You may choose to use one game from the digital materials in place of a game from the written materials, or you may choose to use one of the written games instead of a digital game. You have to think about what's going to work best for you, your students, and your school. And then you're going to create a lesson template that just lists the activities that you are going to do. It doesn't have all of the directions, but it will allow you to stay on task and never have to turn around to look at a lesson plan book or scroll through your tablet looking at your lesson plans trying to figure out what's next, or staring blankly up at a screen wondering, oh, what activity is this? I don't recognize it. Once you've created your lesson plan template, you're going to practice out loud. Now, this may seem a little bit silly to you, and you may feel self-conscious at first, but there is a huge difference between practicing in your mind and practicing out loud, standing up, using the cards, turning on the tablet, connecting to the school Wi-Fi, connecting to the projector, and saying what needs to be done next. Practice out loud. Know when you're going to connect and how you're going to connect. Once you've practiced and you know exactly what you need to do your lesson plan, pack those materials up. Pack your laptop or your tablet, your Bluetooth speaker, your flashcards, whatever you need, pack it up and be ready. This is what a lesson template looks like. These are brilliant. They show you exactly the order of the activities, and you get to put down exactly what they are. These are super, super easy to follow. You can refer to them, you don't miss a beat, and you can stay on track. If you stay on track, the students are more likely to stay on track. Just remember, this doesn't take the place of practice. You practice after you've created these. This is one that's been filled out. Everybody's will look different. You will write in a way that makes sense to you. You will put in the notes that make sense to you. You will write in the language that makes sense to you. I tend to write in whatever language I am thinking in. And so mine are very much Spanglish. I have English and Spanish going on. Whatever makes sense and works for you. As you can see on this one, this is a full lesson plan, a 45-minute lesson plan. I've put a line through if needing to divide the class. If you have the kids for 2 30-minute classes a week, then you can divide this in half, and it gives you what you need to properly end and to properly begin both halves of the lesson. Thank you for your time, and welcome to the Language Project.